So there was no video on Friday. The primary reason for there being no video on Friday is because I spent half of the video that I had planned for Friday talking about the Alabama job and who I thought was going to be the next head coach for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And by the time that that video would have been uploaded, they had already hired Kalen DeBoer. So that video became completely irrelevant. This video is also not going to be the video that I promised on Wednesday, mainly because that video is taking much longer than I thought it would. I had planned to do a whole bunch of stuff with that video. I am not going to be doing all of it, and I'm going to have to seriously sit down and kind of figure out how I plan on doing the video where I explain how I scout people and certain positions. So today I am instead just going to talk about the Detroit Lions winning a playoff game for the first time while I've been alive. So without further ado, I'd like to say hello and welcome to the JSA studio. I'm your host, as always, Nathan, and today we're talking about the Detroit Lions. One last contextual thing to talk about here. This video is basically just going to be a podcast because I am recording this at 11:18 p.m. Sunday night, and I need to be in bed by midnight and asleep by 12:30 in order to wake up on time to get to work tomorrow. So this video is going to be a relatively quick endeavor, and this will be the only screen that is shown. So go ahead and just put the phone down or put on some Bluetooth earbuds and start walking around and doing other stuff, because this is all you're getting for today. I have 40 minutes to make this video, and I apologize for that. Now that I've wasted 2 minutes, let's go ahead and actually talk about the matter at hand. The Detroit Lions won a playoff game. So first off, I am remarkably impressed with both of these teams and how clean this game was. There wasn't a whole lot of penalties, and there was 0 turnovers. I don't particularly believe that either side can say they got a massive advantage from the referees. As far as I can remember, having just watched the game, it just ended less than 10 minutes ago. There was obviously the whole offside false start thing where the wrong call was made, and that obviously killed an entire drive, and more than that, sucked a lot of the momentum out of the Detroit Lions team and the fans in the crowd. However, I do believe that there were 2 sort of no calls that absolutely benefited Detroit in this game. The big one was that Cameron Sutton absolutely got away with what at least should have been illegal contact on Puka Nacua on that 3rd down pass where Stafford tried to gun it in there to him after the Lions accepted the holding penalty, which I thought wasn't a great idea, but they ended up working out and they had to punt. So, that was a gamble, and it worked out for Dan Campbell. And there are times where Dan Campbell frustrates me. I mean, he called a fake punt earlier this year when we were at our own 27-yard line, and it failed miserably. But I think everyone kind of remembers that, and remembers that that was a bad idea. However, for every one of those, there's been 3 or 4. We're going to design a play for DJ Chark to get a first down on 4th down and win the game against the Packers to keep them out of the playoffs. And this year, in this game, we're going to design a play for Amon-Ra St. Brown to win a playoff game for the first time in 33 years or so. So sometimes there's a lot of stuff with Dan Campbell that I wouldn't necessarily do, but he does it, and I gotta be honest with you, most of the time it works out, which is remarkable to me. Because generally speaking, I am a believer in conventional wisdom, and Dan Campbell appears to not be that, and it's working out for Dan Campbell. And looking ahead to next week really quickly, the Lions will play the winner of either Tampa Bay or Philadelphia. That game will start in about 2 hours from the time that you are watching this video, if you watch it right when it comes out. But either way, I think those are winnable games for Detroit, especially at home. Now, Philadelphia, they would have to win in a genuine, probably 30-plus point shootout. And the Detroit Lions remain, as they were earlier on in the season, a very, very bad matchup for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So if the Lions do get Tampa Bay, I would feel fairly confident about them winning that game. However, if they get Philadelphia, I think it would probably be closer to like a 50-50 or a pure toss-up game. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Philadelphia was favored in that matchup, even though it was in Detroit, because Philadelphia does still have that really, really good pass rush. And even though their linebackers and secondary have been absolutely trash, they are built to take advantage of what Detroit does very poorly on offense. So I don't really know how that matchup would go. I haven't watched enough of the Philadelphia Eagles, and I know they're not the same team that we saw make the playoff run last year, but schematically, I imagine they're very similar, and that Philadelphia team was built to take advantage of what Detroit does bad on both sides of the football. So I don't particularly want to play Philadelphia all that much, but I do still think it is a winnable game. And I think Dan Campbell should win Coach of the Year here. He's not going to, in all likelihood, he's not going to. I don't know who they're going to give it to because there's a lot of really good candidates this year, but I genuinely think that Dan Campbell should win it. He did something that like 20 football coaches have never done. He won an NFL playoff game for the Detroit Lions. And more so than that, Detroit just, I believe, set the franchise record for wins in a season with their 13th win this week. And they had, I think, one 12-win season before this year. So he's doing stuff that has literally never been done before in the history of the Detroit Lions. So I definitely think that he deserves to win Coach of the Year. Again, he won't, but he should win Coach of the Year. One of the last few things that I want to talk about here is that I do feel like the Lions have problems that are going to keep them from being a real Super Bowl contender, in my opinion. I think they can win next week. However, if they play either Green Bay or the 49ers, I think that's a really, really bad matchup for the Lions. So I don't want to play either of those two teams, but we're going to play one of them if we win next week. And obviously, we would have a better chance of beating the Packers than we would beating the San Francisco 49ers. I think the 49ers would kind of fairly easily get their way to the Super Bowl if they were to meet up in the NFC Championship game. And the fatal flaws of this team, to me, are the secondary and Aaron Glenn's play calling, and then Jared Goff's lack of the ability to move around in the pocket. As a defensive guy and a defensive coach, I can tell you straight up, it is such an incredible advantage as a defensive play caller to go against a quarterback that can't move around. It is such an advantage for the defense because even an average pass rush is going to be able to affect the quarterback on 20% of the plays, assuming the quarterback is a statue like Jared Goff. However, I don't particularly think that's something that I can really complain about all that much. I don't think it's a legitimate criticism because the offensive line is very, 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 very good in pass protection. And Jared Goff has legitimately played at a Pro Bowl caliber level this year. He probably should have made the Pro Bowl over Matthew Stafford. However, Goff's inability to move around is a liability, especially against a team that can rush the passer like Philadelphia or San Francisco. Moving on to my other point of contention, there were several times in this game where I correctly predicted the exact defense that the Lions were going to run and the exact outcome of the play that the Rams were going to run. Aaron Glenn is a very predictable play caller, especially so on third down. I don't know if the Lions ran zone once on third down in this game, because it was all man and it was all blitzes, and the Rams burned them 6 or 7 times on third down because they ran the same defense over and over again. And just in general, this is something that Aaron Glenn has changed since last year, and it's part of the reason why the defense is legitimately better than it was last year, which is he has kind of stopped running man-to-man as much as he did in previous years, because he realizes now that he does not have the personnel to run man coverage as much as he wants to, because you have 2 liabilities at the cornerback position. So we have, generally speaking, been seeing more zone coverage out of him this year. However, when it is, the money down, when it's on the line, he's going back to his bread and butter, which is off man coverage and blitzing the quarterback. And the Rams' offensive line is too good for that to work. And the Rams' wide receivers are too good for that to work. And they got absolutely torched in the secondary in this game. And Aaron Glenn did not particularly make any real adjustments in this game. The Lions got kind of lucky that the play calling for the Rams turned to absolute shit inside the red zone this game. If the Rams run the football on first or second down, then they probably score a touchdown on one of those red zone trips. But instead, they threw like 3 straight passes in all of their red zone trips. I will also say that the Lions' pass rush did affect Matthew Stafford in the red zone more than it did between the 20s, so to speak. However, I do think that the Lions did kind of get lucky, specifically on the play in the first red zone trip, I think, where they blitzed everybody and it was man-to-man across the board, and Matthew Stafford threw a pass that got tipped at the line of scrimmage and fell incomplete. If Stafford can get that ball off a half a second earlier and hit Cooper Kupp, that's probably a touchdown. Now, the Lions made a play on that play, but it was kind of a lucky break, so to speak. I'm going to shift gears here to the offense. And part of the reason why I'm not going to be that sad when Ben Johnson leaves as the offensive play caller for the Detroit Lions is that Ben Johnson is very, very good at game planning, and this Lions offense is very good in the first half and very good in the second half of the fourth quarter when they need it. However, he struggles mightily in the third quarter and the first half of the fourth quarter after the defense makes adjustments, and his in-game adjustments need a lot of help because the defense this game wasn't particularly doing a whole lot of anything different after they kind of figured out how to stop Detroit in the first part of the third quarter. They then basically did the same exact thing that they did on that drive, the next few drives when the Lions only got 3 points to their name. However, outside of that, I do think that the offensive game plan for this game was astonishingly good. They came out and were outright dominant. I mean, I think they scored 21 points on their first 3 drives, and all of those drives were longer than 4 minutes. So that's basically the entire first quarter of the game out the window. This was a very low possession football game, which I think is part of the reason that the Lions won the game. So that was also a very good nugget of game planning for the Detroit Lions. They realized if we can hold the Rams to field goals, which they were able to do defensively, then limiting the possessions and the opportunity of the Rams is kind of the way to go. Jared Goff was good when he wasn't under pressure, and that's the story of Jared Goff in general. And this year, he hasn't been under pressure a whole lot. And in this game, he wasn't particularly under pressure a whole lot. He did have the one tremendously awful play where he threw it backwards to Brock Wright or whoever was there. And that was just dumb all around. Jared Goff, generally speaking, is good for one of those a game. And you just have to be able to either hope that it doesn't come in a critical point or that it doesn't actually end up being all that bad. It could be a dropped interception or whatever, but Jared Goff does usually have one of those types of moments a game. But outside of that, he was really, really good, and he threw a couple of passes into some really, really tight holes, and the run game was effective when David Montgomery was getting consistent carries, and when he wasn't getting consistent carries, the run game was not very effective, mainly because Jahmyr Gibbs is best utilized as a guy who comes in after you've already established David Montgomery, and then he sort of comes in and changes the pace, so to speak. Either way, all of my gripes about this game and Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson and Jared Goff and everybody, it doesn't particularly matter. This is absolutely a team that can win next week, and this is a team that I think is capable of upsetting the 49ers or beating the Packers. So the Super Bowl is on the table for the Detroit Lions. And the fact that I am saying that out loud right now is an absolutely insane fact of reality. And I have never been in a better mood probably in my entire life. Again, kind of like when I talked about Michigan winning the national championship here. I'm a very neutral guy emotionally, but I'm absolutely ecstatic. Like, if you asked me to describe myself as a football fan, I say Lions fan before Michigan fan. Generally speaking, I do find the NFL more entertaining than college football. College football is just a lot easier to talk about. So that sort of became the focus of this channel this year during the season. But for today, I am very proud to be a Detroit Lions fan. It'll probably hit me 2 or 3 days from now, what I really just witnessed, like it did with the national championship game. But I am absolutely ecstatic and very proud of this team. But that's just me, and what do I know? I'm just some asshole on the internet giving you his opinion. And so at this point, I'd like to remind you to like the video, subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and if you disagree with me at any point, or you just have something to say, go ahead and drop a comment down in the comment section below. And now with the outro out of the way, there's only one thing left to say, and that's that I'll see you next time.